Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This past weekend, the Democratic Assembly of Alberta Doctors, called the Representative Forum, voted overwhelmingly to call a referendum. The question is whether or not the Minister of Health still enjoys the confidence of Alberta doctors. Now, if the vote says he doesn't, the AMA will ask the Premier to step in and give his personal attention to the crisis the Health Minister has created. Now, the Premier has claimed he loves referendum. So will he honour the results of this one and take over the file if Alberta doctors vote that they have no confidence in his minister?
Good question.
The Honourable the Premier.
Wins the award for the dumbest question of the session, Mr. Speaker. This government was elected by over 1 million Albertans, the largest Democratic mandate in history. The minister was elected by a vast majority of his Calgary-Acadia constituents. He's accountable. This government is accountable to Albertans, not to a special interest group. Mr. Speaker, we will govern for all Albertans. We support our physicians. We will give them not just fair but generous compensation. They will continue to be the best compensated in Canada. But, Mr. Speaker, 10,800 people don't get to dictate the fiscal future of Alberta for 4.4 million Albertans.
The Honourable Member.
Well, given that this is a Premier who has no shortage of special interests to which he is beholden and happy to listen to, and given that Westlock Mayor Ralph Lariger, Westlock County Reeve Lou Hall, Village of Clyde Mayor Krista Klausing, who may have voted for this government, wrote a letter in June calling on the Health Minister to, quote, renegotiate and come to an agreement that ensures equitable access to medical services for everyone. And given that doctors have indeed shown that they are completely willing to negotiate and come to an agreement, why has the Health Minister failed to write back to these local leaders, and why has he failed to get back to the table with Alberta doctors?
The Honourable the Premier.
He has not done so, Mr. Speaker. The Medical Association has failed to come forward with a credible proposal to maintain physician compensation at the current historic high level of $5.4 billion. So let's just make this really simple. What the NDP wants is for us to open the floodgates for another $2 billion of additional physician compensation costs over the next 3 years. While the private sector has seen their incomes go down by 10%, public sector unions have been at zeros, the physicians have gone up by over 6 points a year, and the NDP wants that to continue. It's fundamentally unfair, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton City Centre.
Given, Mr. Speaker, that Albertans trust their doctors more than this Premier's cherry-picked statistics and constant misrepresentations of their income, and given that the BC Health Minister and Manitoba Health Minister, unlike this Premier or this Minister, have managed to maintain and reach agreements with doctors just last year, and given the Saskatchewan Health Minister managed to do the same thing with doctors earlier this month, why is it that this government and this minister have failed where provincial counterparts have succeeded in sitting down with their provincial doctors like adults and negotiating actual lasting agreements?
The Honourable the Premier has risen.
Let's talk about the provincial government's record on this. Under the NDP, the cost of physician compensation went up by 23% over 4 years. They forced the nurses to take zeros. They forced the janitors in the hospitals to take zeros. But they gave the doctors, the most highly paid people in the public sector, who represent 10% of the provincial budget and a quarter of public sector compensation, they gave them a $1 billion bonus, Mr. Speaker. And without responsible leadership, we will see another $2 billion increase in those costs. During a fiscal and economic disaster, Mr. Speaker, we have to stand up for doctors and taxpayers.